Nights in the ER at St. John Gabriel Medical Center always carried a scent of their own, the sharp tang of antiseptic blended with the metallic smell of blood, mixed with the thick bitterness of stale coffee and the fatigue rising off shoulders that had worked far too long. I'd grown used to it over the past 3 years, but tonight, the scent of blood was stronger than usual, as if it were telling a story I wasn't prepared to hear. I stood at the nurse's station, pinching the bridge of my nose to push away the lingering headache after a 16-hour shift. Dr. Aaron Miller shoved a thin chart toward me without even looking up from his phone. Emily, room 6, deep laceration, possible stab wound. Patient refuses to see a doctor. Patch him up and discharge him. Waiting room's a mess. His tone was so indifferent that I couldn't tell if he was giving an order or just complaining about another chaotic night shift. I looked down at the chart. Its hurried scribbles reading male, 30-40, laceration. Refuses MD. No name, no details. Just writing that looked like it was hiding something. But here, I was used to people who didn't want to give their names. Drunks, bar fighters, men running from debt, or running from memories. That's Chicago at night, full of secrets, full of shadows. I gathered my tools, gauze, saline, sutures, a curved needle, familiar things that were almost extensions of my hands. Walking toward room 6, I frowned. The curtain was pulled shut so tightly it looked glued to the metal frame. Too tight, too careful, and too quiet. I knocked lightly. "Hi, I'm Emily Carter, night shift nurse. I'm coming in, okay." No answer, just a heavy rush of thick air when I eased the curtain aside. I froze. There were 3 men in the room. 2 stood on either side of the bed, like statues carved from stone black suits, black ties, polished black shoes. Their silence made the sound of my heartbeat unnervingly loud. And for some reason, I instantly knew these were not drunk guys who'd stumbled in from a bar fight. But the 3rd man, he sat on the edge of the bed, expensive white dress shirt soaked in blood down his left side, dark crimson, warm and spreading through the fabric like crushed petals. His black hair, usually slicked back, was slightly tousled near his temple, probably from pain. His sharp jawline, straight nose, and pressed lips combined into a dangerously beautiful face. The kind of beauty that made you stare a second longer than you should before remembering to breathe. His eyes lifted to meet mine, cold gray, like the icy surface of a lake the year winter arrived early in Chicago. I almost stepped back. "Leave." The voice was deep, low, tinged unmistakably with an Italian accent, though layered with exhaustion. I thought he was talking to me, but the 2 men behind him slipped out instantly, silent as shadows, leaving just him. And me? And the night. I cleared my throat, steadying my pulse. "I need to look at your wound." Under the pale fluorescent lights, he watched me as if he were reading every micro-expression on my face. Those eyes made me feel like I was standing under a spotlight, too exposed, too bare. "You're shaking," he said quietly, as if stating a fact he'd long grown used to pointing out. I glanced down at my hands. He was right. My fingers trembled after too many hours of work, and perhaps also because of those eyes. Last time I had coffee was 8 hours ago. I smiled weakly, just tired. The corner of his mouth lifted almost like a smile, but it vanished instantly. "I didn't ask for a doctor." "But you're bleeding, and I'm here." A low hum, not agreement, but not rejection either. When he started unbuttoning his shirt with one hand, I stepped closer to assist. The moment my fingers brushed his wrist, a light grip. Warm and firm, my heartbeat stumbled. His skin burned with an oddly high temperature. His hand was large, strong, with old calluses. Definitely not someone who worked at a desk. Definitely someone who had seen too much. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emily Carter." "Emily." He repeated my name like he was tasting it. Strangely, even after he let my wrist go, the skin where he touched lingered with a faint tingle. When I lifted his shirt, the wound revealed itself a nearly 4-inch slash along his ribs. Deep, clean, sharp, not a kitchen knife, not broken glass. Something more professional. You were stabbed with a tactical knife. He stayed silent for a beat. A blade? But in his eyes, something flashed, something that did not belong to an ordinary victim. I pressed antiseptic to his skin. This will hurt. I'm used to it. He really was. No flinch, no twitch, just unblinking eyes fixed on mine. You've been injured like this before, enough to forget the feeling of fear. I paused. That was not something normal people said. But I kept suturing, focusing on each stitch, trying not to think about how close he was or how dangerously compelling he felt. When I reached the 8th stitch, the curtain rustled. Another man stepped inside, leaned down, and whispered something urgently in Italian. The patient's expression shifted, cooling by a degree. He replied with a few icy Italian words. The man vanished. What happened? I asked. Nothing that concerns you. His tone sharpened, like steel cooling after flame. I kept working, though the air around us shifted like the smell of a storm skimming across a rooftop. When I finished, I told him to keep the area dry for 48 hours and avoid strenuous activity. I wrote instructions in the chart, even though I knew none of them wanted paperwork. He stood up tall enough that I had to tilt my chin up to meet his eyes. His breath carried a faint heat of fever, but his gaze was razor sharp. How much, he asked. I blinked. You think I take personal payment from patients? You need money. I clenched the hem of my scrub top. It doesn't matter. I don't take cash. He didn't argue. He just slipped a thick wad of bills into my pocket with practiced ease, like this wasn't his first time paying for silence. I pushed his hand away, but he had already stepped back, rebuttoning his ruined white shirt. I appreciate your discretion, he said. I didn't promise anything. You'll keep your word, I know. How I wanted to ask, but something about the calm certainty in his voice silenced me. He tilted his head slightly, a lock of dark hair falling across his forehead. Emily Carter, you look exhausted. Go home. Then he walked out of the room, quiet as a cold wind slicing through the disinfectant-soaked hallway. I stayed behind, staring at the curtains swaying in his wake, trying to steady my pulse. Only when I bent down to clean my tools did I realize I never asked for his name. When my shift ended at 6 a.m, I walked home to my apartment in Westtown. Chicago's early light was soft and gold, calmer than I expected. I almost stopped thinking about those gray eyes, that warm hand on my wrist, that chilling stillness he carried, until I noticed something. A black SUV was crawling slowly behind me. And when I turned into my street, a second one pulled up at the corner. No one got out. Not a single word. Just 2 cars, waiting like shadows. A realization struck me, cold as ice against my spine. Maybe last night I touched something I was never meant to touch. I never thought I would be afraid of daylight, but the next morning, when a thin strip of sunlight slipped through the window of my tiny Westtown apartment and reflected across the worn wooden floor, I finally understood what that feeling meant. I'd slept for barely 2 hours. The rumble of that SUV's engine from the night before still haunted my ears, a steady rhythm marking the presence of something too big, too dangerous to name. I kept telling myself it's just a coincidence, just a neighbor's car. But since when did my neighbors drive black-tinted SUVs with out-of-state plates, guarded by men in suits? I pulled the curtains back just enough to peek outside. The black SUV was parked 2 buildings away, silent, still, dark as its own shadow. And the same man from last night stood there, arms crossed, eyes hidden behind sunglasses, unmoving. My heart tightened. They were still there. I tried to ignore it, brushed my teeth, changed clothes, prepared to go back to the hospital. But when I took the trash downstairs, a sudden knock echoed through my apartment door. Steady, firm, not rushed, yet leaving no room to be ignored. Thump, thump, thump. I froze behind the door, my pulse climbing. Miss Emily Carter, a man's voice deep, clear, cold, like a Chicago winter sky. I didn't open the door. Who is it? My name is Jonas. Mr. Romano requests to speak with you. That name, Romano, like a distant bell striking my memory, pulling up the image of a blood-soaked shirt, cold gray eyes, and the warmth of his hand on my wrist. I don't know anyone by that name. My voice shook more than I wanted. Silence. Then Jonas replied. He says you stitched his wound last night. The injury is infected. He's running a fever. You are requested to come take care of him. Requested. I clenched my fist. If he has a fever, he can go to the hospital. He will not go to a hospital, Jonas said slowly, as if stating the most obvious fact in the world. I stepped back, heart pounding. I refuse. Miss Carter? Jonas said this time with a sharpness that made my skin prickle. Mr. Romano holds you in high regard. He says he would prefer not to resort to other methods. A cold line of dread slid down my spine. In the ER, I learned to classify people's words. Some sounded like suggestions, and others like instructions with consequences. Jonas's tone belonged to the second category. I pressed my back to the door. I'm not going anywhere with strangers. Outside, I heard Jonas exhale softly. Then the sound of a small bag being placed on the floor. Mr. Romano would like to speak with you directly. I'll leave the phone here. Footsteps retreated. I waited nearly a minute before daring to open the door a crack. A black phone lay on the floor like a trap that didn't even pretend to hide. The moment I picked it up, the screen lit. An incoming call. I swallowed hard and answered. The voice on the other side stole my breath. Emily Carter? His voice low, slightly hoarse, yet unaffected by fever. Cold, but very alive. Mr. Romano, I tried to steady my tone. I need you. Just 4 words with no clear emotion, yet somehow, they tightened something deep inside me. I'm a hospital nurse. I don't work outside. Last night, you saved me, he replied immediately sharp, yet oddly gentle. I gritted my teeth. I can't continue. This is illegal, dangerous. His voice cut through mine, hard as steel dunked in ice water. My wound is infected. I need an IV and a proper cleaning. My men have the necessary equipment. You will be picked up and returned safely. 1 hour. I'm not... If you refuse, he murmured, his voice dropping into something so deep and quiet my skin prickled. I'll have to ask someone else at St. Gabriel. It seems Dr. Miller cares very much about keeping his job, and medical records shouldn't contain irregularities. I froze. That wasn't a threat. It was a fact. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. You don't need to involve anyone else, I whispered. Exactly. He said, I only need you. Before I could respond, he added softly, You have 15 minutes. And the call ended. I stood there for a long time, the phone in my hand suddenly twice as heavy. Last night, I'd stepped into his world without realizing there was no way back. And now, I was being pulled in again, by my own hand. When Jonas escorted me outside, 2 black SUVs were already waiting. I climbed into one, curling my fingers into my sleeves, feeling like I was signing an invisible contract with the dark. The moment I sat down, Jonas tied a soft black cloth over my eyes. What the hell, I blurted. Nothing personal, Miss Carter. Mr. Romano's location must remain undisclosed. I wanted to protest, wanted to shout that I wouldn't go anywhere blindfolded. But the truth was, I had no better choice. The SUV moved, curve after curve until I lost all sense of direction. The city noise faded into quieter roads, and cold wind whispered through the gaps in the door. Finally, we stopped. When Jonas removed the blindfold, I blinked several times, adjusting to the light. In front of me stood a lakeside mansion, its glass panels catching the silver morning sun. Pines lined the driveway, and men in black suits scattered the grounds like ink strokes on white paper. No flashiness, just danger placed precisely where it belonged. They led me through a high-ceilinged foyer, lit by warm golden chandeliers. The place was so pristine it made St. Gabriel look like a warehouse. Abstract paintings hung on the walls, each worth more than my annual salary. The master bedroom was on the 2nd floor. The door swung open, and there he was. Alessandro Romano, leaning against a pile of pillows, lips pale, sweat beading on his forehead. No icy aura, no untouchable presence like last night. He looked like a man trying not to collapse. But when he saw me, his eyes lit up not with the relief of a patient seeing medical help, but something else. As if he had known I would come, as if he knew I wouldn't turn my back. You finally came, he said, voice hoarse but deep. I set my medical bag down, forcing my tone to stay flat. I didn't come for you. I came because it's my job. And because you don't want others paying the price for your choices." He tilted his head, gaze cutting through me. I didn't answer. I just pulled up a chair and opened the bandages. The smell of pus and dried blood hit immediately, making me wince. The wound was angry red, skin swollen, clearly infected hours ago. "Did you move too much? I had things to do. I told you to keep the wound still for a day." "You said it. I never promised." I bit my tongue to keep from snapping. My hands trembled a little from stress, from pressure, and maybe from those gray eyes watching me, always cold, yet hiding something else underneath, something like reluctant acknowledgement. When I injected the anesthetic, Alessandro flinched slightly, but didn't complain, didn't pull away. He watched me closely, intensely, as if each breath I took mattered. "You know," I muttered, trying to sound normal, "you've caused me more trouble in the last 12 hours than 3 years at St. Gabriel combined." He tilted his head. "I apologize." For the first time, I heard that word from him slow, sincere enough to catch me off guard. I didn't think this man even knew how to say sorry. "I didn't want to pull you in. Then don't, no choice." That line, I couldn't tell if it was meant for me or himself. I cleaned the wound, injected antibiotics, set up the IV. As the fluid dripped down, his expression eased, his breathing steadied. In that moment, I finally saw him clearly, not as an underworld figure, not as the man whose presence could silence an entire room, but as someone fighting a fever, forcing himself to be stronger than pain. And for some reason, my heart tightened. He looked at me, eyes softer now. His voice dropped. "You did very well." I jolted. I'm not your you." A faint curve tugged at his lips, something subtle, almost amused. "Emily," he said, repeating my name. "It suits you." I turned away, but the warmth of that half-smile clung to my skin, annoyingly hot. As I packed my tools, I said, "I'll leave once the IV is done." Alessandro paused. "You can't—" My grip tightened on the bag. "You have no right to keep me here." He met my eyes slow, deep, before speaking in a whisper that froze the air between us. "Someone followed you from the hospital to this place." I stiffened. "Who?" He closed his eyes for a second, as if weighing what he should reveal. "Not my men, not Jonas, not anyone in this house." Then he opened them. "Someone who wants to find me by finding you." My heart dropped into a cold, empty void. "You mean someone is watching me because of you?" He gave a slow nod. "And if I let you walk out now?" His voice sharpened but softened at the edges, like a vow whispered into darkness. "I can't guarantee you'll be safe enough to return to the life you had." I stood there, medical bag in hand, feeling like I had just stepped back from the edge of a cliff, only to realize the abyss was staring back at me. The door to the treatment room closed behind me with a soft click, but in the silence that blanketed the vast house, it echoed like the cold snap of a prison lock. Jonas led me down a long oak-paneled hallway, abstract paintings in muted tones lining the walls, warm yellow light spilling from elegant fixtures you'd only see in very expensive homes. But what sent a chill through me wasn't the luxury, it was the absence of human sound. Everything was too perfect, too clean, too quiet, too controlled. "Your room." Jonas stopped in front of a dark wooden door and opened it with a smooth, practiced motion. "Mr. Romano would like you to rest here." I glanced around, searching for the most neutral words I could find. For how long? Jonas held my gaze for a long beat. "Until things are stable." The vagueness of that answer made my heart skip. Stable in what sense? "Depends on the situation outside. Jonas, I have my own place, my job, and someone is watching you." He cut in, still calm and professional. "You know you can't go back right now." My body went rigid. Jonas dipped his head in a courteous, almost old-fashioned gesture, then left. The door closed, leaving me alone in a room nearly the size of my entire Chicago apartment. I was supposed to feel safe here. The room had everything: an enormous bed with crisp white sheets, a closet full of new clothes, a marble bathroom with a tub facing the lake. But all of it just made me feel like I'd been placed into an upscale cage. I walked to the door and tried the handle. Locked from the outside, not the inside. My breath hitched. Not a guest, a prisoner. I stepped back, bracing a hand against the door, forcing myself to take a deep breath. Old memories rose like floodwater gunshots, flashing lights. Michael collapsing in front of me 3 years ago. That paralyzing, trapped feeling of helplessness made my heart tremble to a rhythm I knew too well. No, I wasn't going to fall apart, not again. I scanned the room, trying to latch onto something normal. A cup of tea, still hot, sat on the wooden table. Someone had prepared it before I even arrived. Strangely enough, the faint scent of chamomile rising from it warmed my head just a little. On the sofa, there was a cream-colored box. I opened it. Inside were brand new clothes, simple but elegant, all in my size. Not hospital scrubs, not flashy designer pieces. More like the kind of wardrobe someone might pick for a long-term guest. Or someone who wasn't going to leave. I sat on the edge of the bed. Everything was too perfect not to be unsettling. I tried to calm down, but it didn't last long. A knock sounded at the door. Soft, polite, but enough to make every muscle in my body tense. Miss Carter. A woman's voice came from outside. I hesitated. Who is it? I'm Hannah Clark, the housekeeper for the Romano family. Mr. Alessandro asked me to see if you needed anything. I wavered for a few seconds before the door opened from the outside. Should I be afraid? Yes, but the moment Hannah stepped in, that fear eased just a little. She looked to be in her 40s, trim and composed, dressed in a simple beige uniform. Her eyes were kind but guarded, the kind of eyes that had seen a lot and spoken little. I brought you some tea, Hannah said, setting another cup down on the table, steam curling upward. You must be tired after such a long night. I looked at her. Why was the door locked? Hannah paused for a second, a hesitation so small most people would miss it, but not me. It was for your protection, she replied. Her tone was gentle, but it only reinforced my suspicion. I don't think locking someone from the outside is how you protect them. Hannah sat on the chair near the door, keeping a respectful distance. Miss Carter, not everyone out there wants you safe. Because of the person following me from the hospital. Yes? Who are they? Hannah blinked slowly. I'm not told the details, but Mr. Alessandro said someone has targeted you in order to find him. I wrapped my arms around myself as if to hold on to whatever warmth I had left. I'm just a nurse. Why would they target me? Hannah studied me for a while, then said something that sent a chill all the way down my spine. There are people who, once they decide to get to him, will go after anyone he pays attention to. I fell silent. After a moment, Hannah stood up, and there was something genuinely earnest in her eyes. If you'll take a piece of advice from me, try not to see this place as a prison, but as a temporary shelter. It might be a few days, it might be longer. That depends on how things go. How things go with Romano. And with you. I suddenly found it hard to breathe. Hannah offered a soft smile. Don't worry, no one here wants to hurt you. Mr. Alessandro was very clear that you're free to move around the main areas of the house except leaving the grounds. Free inside a cage, I muttered. Hannah didn't deny it. A flicker of sympathy crossed her face. This door won't be locked again, she added quietly, as if to reassure me. If you need anything, just come find me. She left, and true to her word, there was no click of a lock this time. I inhaled deeply. At least, I wasn't literally locked in. Not completely. When I stepped out into the hallway, the house seemed to exhale a long, slow breath. No voices, no chatter. Just the distant sound of wind off the lake, my footsteps on oak flooring, and the unnerving sensation that eyes I couldn't see were following my every move. I went down the main staircase into the vast foyer. The living room was so large, I felt like I'd wandered into another world, a place where wealth and danger coexisted without touching. A grand piano sat by the floor-to-ceiling windows facing the lake. Early afternoon light spilled across the water, scattering silvery patterns. It was beautiful, so beautiful that for a few seconds, I forgot how uneasy I felt. What do you think? The voice behind me made me jump. I turned to see Lorenzo Bianchi, the older man with neatly groomed salt and pepper hair, dressed in a refined gray suit. His presence radiated quiet authority. He smiled gently. Don't be afraid. I'm not here to harm you. I pressed my lips together. You were in the room earlier. Yes, Lorenzo moved closer but kept a respectful distance. And I'm also the one who warned you. Warned me about Alessandro Romano. The way he said Alessandro's name made my skin prickle. Lorenzo motioned toward the sofa, inviting me to sit. After a moment's hesitation, I took a seat at the end of the long couch. He chose an armchair opposite me. Do you know why you're here? Emily. I shook my head. I'm just the one who stitched him up. Lorenzo chuckled softly, a sound with no humor at all. You're mistaken. Alessandro never let someone put a knife into him and then vanish as if they never existed. I'm not from his world. Lorenzo finished for me. But you appeared at the right time, did the right thing, and said things to him that no one else would dare to say. And that is what made Alessandro notice you. I swallowed. I don't want to be noticed in this way. There are things we want, Lorenzo replied, and things we're forced to accept. I met his gaze head on. Mr. Romano said someone is watching me in order to find him. Is that true? It is. Who? Val Lorenzo stopped himself, changing direction quickly. Someone who doesn't care who's innocent and who isn't. I caught the shift, a wariness I couldn't fully decode. But when he looked at me, his eyes steady and layered with experience, I knew he wasn't lying. Can I leave? Not right now. Tomorrow also no. My hands curled tightly together. Alessandro is keeping me here. No, Lorenzo shook his head. He's trying to keep you safe. Safe. I let out a short, rough laugh. I'm in the house of a crime boss, being watched, locked in, blindfolded and driven here. And you call that safe? Lorenzo sighed. I understand your fear. But Emily, I've been with Alessandro for over 20 years. I know when he acts out of power, and when he acts because someone matters. You're saying I matter to him, my voice trembled. He didn't answer. But sometimes, silence is the clearest form of admission. And one more thing, he added, voice dropping, more serious. I don't know what's happened in your life, but I see it in your eyes. Fear, vigilance, and the exhaustion of someone who's had to protect herself for far too long. My heart slammed against my ribs. I don't want someone like you dragged into the tragedy of this world, Lorenzo said. But once Alessandro has made up his mind, no one changes it. I leaned back against the sofa, feeling the fabric press into my spine. I don't understand. What does he want from me? Lorenzo studied me for a long moment, then answered in a low, somber tone. Not what you think, not yet, but... He hesitated. In this house, there are only two kinds of people, those who belong to Alessandro, and problems that need to be dealt with. I said nothing. Miss Carter, he continued slowly, if you want to survive, learn which one you are. A cold draft swept through the foyer, slipping into my chest like an invisible hand. In that instant, a sharp, bitter truth settled over me. I wasn't just a nurse anymore, not just the one who closed his wound. I had become part of Alessandro Romano's world, a part even I didn't yet understand. I stood in the grand hall for a long time after Lorenzo left, letting his words sink into every breath I took. They didn't sound like threats, more like warnings shaped by experience and sympathy. In Romano's world, I had only two choices: belong to him or become a problem. My chest tightened as if an invisible cord had been pulled around it. Night fell over the Romano estate faster than I expected. When darkness swallowed the lake entirely, the whole mansion glowed like an oasis lit by warm golden light. Its beauty made me forget just for a few seconds that I was being held here. I wandered downstairs toward the kitchen for some water. The kitchen was spacious, the kind you'd see in architecture magazines, minimalistic, spotless, and lacking any sign of everyday life. Only one calm, deep voice broke the silence. You shouldn't walk around alone at night, Emily. I startled. Alessandro emerged from the shadows near the wine rack, his tall frame striking in a black button-up shirt with the sleeves rolled up. The collar opened just enough to reveal the sharp line of his collarbone. He didn't look like someone recovering from a dangerous wound. He looked like a lord of the night, perfectly at home in the darkness. Your pulse is fast, he observed, a half smile tugging at his lips. Did I scare you? I don't know who's going to appear in the kitchen at 11 p.m. I tried to keep my voice steady, eyes locked on his movements. Alessandro walked to the counter, poured water into a crystal glass, and set it in front of me. Drink. I eyed the water. There's nothing unusual in it, right? His eyebrow arched as if I had insulted the entire Romano lineage. If I wanted to harm you? Alessandro tilted his head slightly, his tone soft and dangerous like a freshly sharpened blade. I would have done it long ago. I knew that, but there was something suffocating about how calm he was, how easily he could make someone forget to breathe. I picked up the glass and drank a sip, trying to steady myself. You talked to Lorenzo, he asked, as if he already knew exactly what I'd been thinking about all afternoon. I placed the glass down. He said, I need to understand where I am. He's right. Alessandro leaned against the counter, arms crossed. The posture was simple, but somehow it made the entire room seem to fold around him. I don't want to be here, I said honestly. I don't belong in your world. Alessandro's blue-gray eyes stayed on my face so long I had to look away. You still think you can walk out of here easily? His voice was low and sharp, but not threatening, just unavoidably truthful. I swallowed a shaky breath. Then what am I to you? A hostage. No. He stepped closer, each footstep carrying a subtle heat that made my heartbeat stumble. Then what am I asked, braver than I meant to be? He stopped in front of me, close enough for me to catch the scent of warm cedar and something distinctly male dangerous, irresistible, overwhelming. You're the woman who saved my life, Alessandro said slowly, each word brushing against my skin, the one I want to protect, and he leaned down, his eyes locking onto mine, drawing me in like gravity, the one I won't let disappear from my life so easily. My heart slammed against my ribcage. I stepped back on instinct, but the cold counter behind me stopped my retreat. Alessandro closed the remaining distance. Emily, he murmured, are you afraid of me, or of what you feel when you're near me? I stopped breathing. Not because the question was bold, but because the truth behind it made me want to run. I'm not, don't lie. His voice was as soft as the night wind brushing over the lake. I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Alessandro exhaled quietly and stepped back, giving me space to breathe. You don't understand how serious this is. He poured a drink, swirling the liquid thoughtfully. The person who followed you from the hospital is no small matter. They weren't after you. They were using you to get to me. But why me? My voice thickened as if I was inching toward a door with no way back. Alessandro looked directly at me. Because I reacted? What? You're the only one I didn't hide my concern for. His voice dipped a level deeper. And in this world, concern is weakness. My mind reeled. Alessandro, I don't regret it. He cut me off. His eyes softened in a way I had never seen. Emily, you remind me I'm still human. The words struck something in me, not pity, but a painful familiarity, like touching an old scar of my own. I turned away, trying to steady my voice. I can't be someone's weakness. I tried once, and I lost everything. I didn't realize I'd revealed something raw until it was already spoken. Alessandro watched me for a long time, long enough to make my skin prickle. Do you want to tell me? He asked quietly. I shook my head. No, not now. But one day, you will. There was no command in his tone, just a prediction. And terrifyingly, it felt true. No, I couldn't let that happen. I drew a shaky breath. I need to go home. Alessandro, even just for a bit. Impossible. You can't keep me here forever. I won't keep you forever. He set the glass down. But until I remove the people trying to use you as bait, I won't risk letting you step outside alone. Part of me felt safer. Part of me felt suffocated. So I'm under house arrest, if that's what you want to call it. He didn't deny it. That was worse. It's not fair, I whispered. This world has never been fair, Alessandro replied, and his eyes darkened like the night wrapping itself around me. But at the very least, in my world, you won't have to face the pain alone. The last sentence lodged in my throat. I turned away. I need some air. Come with me. I don't want to be near you right now. I know. Alessandro walked toward the door. But I won't let you be out there alone. I frowned. You said I couldn't leave the estate. What's there to worry about? He stopped at the doorway, turning back to me. And for the first time, his eyes didn't carry power or danger, but real concern. Emily, he said slowly, inside this estate, danger doesn't always come from outsiders. A shiver shot through me. What do you mean? He didn't answer. He only watched me for a long moment. Come, he said softly. I'll show you what Lorenzo didn't dare tell you. Alessandro led me out of the kitchen, down the west hallway of the Romano estate, outside the tall glass windows. The night sky was veiled in a thin mist, moonlight spilling over the surface of the lake like shattered glass washed in silver. I followed him with a hesitation I couldn't quite name. Our footsteps were soft against the stone floor, neither fast nor slow, but every step Alessandro took felt weighted, forcing me to match my breathing carefully. What exactly are you trying to show me? I asked, trying to sound calm, though the slight tremor in my voice betrayed me. The reason I have to stay on guard even in my own house. His voice was low, like metal scraping against metal. We stopped at the end of the hallway, where a steel door was set flush into the wall, blending completely into the gray stone. If you weren't paying attention, you'd think it was just part of the wall. Alessandro placed his hand on a small touch panel beside it. A green light scanned across his eye retinal recognition. You have a basement, I asked, heart beginning to race. Not one, he replied as the door unlocked, but 3. A blast of cold air brushed my face, carrying the faint scent of metal and damp stone from the darkness beyond. This wasn't the cool, earthy smell of a wine cellar or a storage room. It smelled like a place you locked people away. I froze. I don't want to go down there. Alessandro turned to look at me. His blue-gray eyes sharp as a blade, but they softened slightly when they settled on my face. Emily. He stepped close, lifting my chin gently with the tip of his finger. If you want the truth, you have to look it in the eye. I don't want to become part of... You already are. Part of it, I opened my mouth to argue, but no words came out. He said it quietly, but every word pressed into me like a weight. Alessandro held out his hand. Come with me. I looked at that hand, long fingers, strong grip, still carrying the faint scent of antiseptic from the wound he was healing. A hand capable of destroying, but also the same hand that had held my wrist in the middle of the night with a gentleness that terrified me. I placed my hand in his. His closed around mine, not too tight, but firm. The door shut behind us, sealing us off from the world above. The underground corridor stretched ahead, small lights lining the ceiling flicking on one by one with each step we took. Are you scared? Alessandro asked. I'm not numb, if that's what you mean. He let out a soft chuckle. I never thought you were... The cold air made me shiver, but his hand around mine kept a reluctant pocket of warmth there. A few steps further, I noticed other steel doors lining the walls on either side. Each one had its own digital control panel, and behind them, whatever lay there was something I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Alessandro. I stopped walking. What are you planning to show me? Is this where you keep people? Wrong, he said, turning toward me, voice dropping into something more elusive. This is where I keep other things. Other things. He nodded toward the third door, motioning for me to come closer. When we reached it, Alessandro entered a code. The door opened. It wasn't a cell. It wasn't an interrogation room. It was a records room, large, clean, organized with unsettling precision. Steel cabinets ran along all 4 walls. In the center, a table was covered with folders, maps, and... I froze. My photograph. Not just one. Dozens. At the hospital, outside my apartment building, even one of me asleep on the night bus. I felt the blood drain from my face. You? My voice barely came out. You were following me. Alessandro didn't look surprised by my reaction. On the contrary, he stood there calmly, as if all of this was completely logical. I wasn't following you. I was following the person following you. Why was I being followed? Because you saved me. I took a step back. Alessandro, please, don't speak in circles. His eyes darkened, and for the first time that night, I saw a flicker of something like frustration, a hint that he was trying to explain something he usually never had to articulate. He moved closer, voice dropping. Valenti pegged you as important to me from that very first night. Valenti, I blinked. The name Lorenzo was about to say, but stopped. Alessandro didn't answer directly. Instead, he laid his hand on a map spread across the table. A certain area was circled near the hospital. He is the most dangerous man in Chicago, Alessandro said slowly. Not just because he kills, but because he enjoys playing. My fingers curled into my palms to hide the trembling. And you think I'm involved with him just because I stitched up your wound? No, Alessandro stepped closer, forcing me to meet his gaze. He thinks you're valuable, because of the way I looked at you. My heart skipped. The way you looked at me, I echoed without meaning to. He was silent for a few seconds. No arrogance, no icy detachment, only honesty. Emily, I couldn't hide my eyes that night, not from him, not from anyone. My throat tightened. He reached for one of the photos on the table and placed it in my hand. It was a shot of me standing by his bed, slightly bent over, focused on suturing his wound. The camera had been far away, but in the frame, I clearly saw Alessandro's gaze fixed on me. It wasn't the way a patient looked at a nurse. It was the look of a man who'd just seen something he hadn't prepared himself for. My chest tightened sharply. I didn't ask your permission to bring you here, Alessandro said, his voice low, soft, yet edged with steel. But believe me, I am keeping you from something much worse. How bad is worse? Bad enough that he'll use anyone connected to me, just to watch me suffer. The room felt like it went silent all at once. And I'm one of those people. No. Alessandro shook his head, and for the first time that night, he stepped close enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath on my skin. You're not one of them. You're the only one he's seen that I won't walk away from. A quiet shiver ran through me, whether from fear or something else rising in my chest. I couldn't tell. A second later, Alessandro lifted his hand and touched my wrist, so lightly it could have been imagined. Do you understand now? Emily, he whispered. It's not that I'm imprisoning you. He's hunting you. I looked up at him, and in that moment, every piece of resistance inside me blurred at the edges. Not because of the name Valenti, but because of the truth. Alessandro had just laid bare clearer than anything he'd said before. A man like him had exposed his weakness because of me. A small sound echoed from the far end of the corridor, the soft ding of an elevator. Alessandro immediately pulled me behind him. Stay still. His face changed completely hard, cold, and lethal. This wasn't the Alessandro who'd talked to me in the kitchen, not the man whose breath had warmed my skin when he stood too close. This was the Romano boss. Footsteps approached light, deliberately softened, but familiar. Jonas appeared. Boss? Alessandro didn't relax his stance. What is it? Jonas flicked a brief glance at me before reporting. Someone just tried to breach the north perimeter. One of the outer glass panels was partially broken. My stomach dropped. Did you catch him? Alessandro asked. No, Jonas answered, but the cameras picked up a silhouette, and you didn't want Miss Carter hearing this before she was ready. Alessandro turned to me. Emily, he said quietly, this isn't over. He didn't say more, but his eyes spoke for him. And you're not leaving me yet. The report of an intruder made the air in the underground hallway thicken, as if it had suddenly been frozen solid. Standing behind Alessandro, I could feel his heartbeat quicken not from fear, but from anger. A fury carefully concealed beneath a face so cold, even metal would tremble before it. Alessandro turned to Jonas, his voice dropping into a tone so deep it almost held no emotion. What did the cameras pick up? Jonas glanced at me for a beat before answering. It's one of Valenti's men, one of the assassins who's been tracking Miss Carter since the hospital. My chest tightened. I instinctively reached for Alessandro's arm, as if needing something steady when the world around me was beginning to tilt into something I could no longer control. How did he know I'm here? I asked, my voice trembling more than I wanted. Jonas looked at Alessandro, waiting for permission before saying anything. Alessandro placed his hand over mine, grounding me with his presence. He didn't know, Alessandro said, but he guessed. My eyes widened, guessed just from following me. Emily. He placed his hand gently on my shoulder, turning me slightly so I could look at him directly. My showing up in your ER room that night left more traces than you realize. You mean me? I stepped back halfway. I caused all of this. No. His voice softened unexpectedly. You're just being pulled into a point of conflict they created on purpose. Jonas cut in. Sharp and clear, Valenti wants boss to expose himself. Using you is the fastest way. Bait? I whispered. I'm just bait to lure you out. The silence of the hallway seemed to agree with my words. Alessandro shook his head. Not just that. His eyes locked onto mine, deep, dark, bottomless. He wants to know what you are to me. I felt myself unravel. I'm nothing to you. A simple sentence, yet, the moment it left my mouth. Something in Alessandro's expression shifted. A brief shadow crossed his eyes, making my breath stick in my throat. He stepped closer. Emily, you stopped being nothing the second you put your hands on my wound. Alessandro, you think I don't want to push you out of this? He spoke softly, but each word sliced the air between us. If I could choose, I would never let you get involved. Not even for a second. In his eyes, I saw something no Mafia boss wanted to reveal, a helplessness born from wanting to protect someone he couldn't afford to lose. But before I could respond, Jonas continued, voice ice sharp. Boss, the footprints at the North Path indicate he wasn't alone. Alessandro tightened his grip on my hand. Emily, with me. He pulled me quickly through the underground hall, past steel doors, past dim ceiling lights flickering above us. His steps were urgent but steady, like someone who'd lived too long being hunted and had learned to move through danger as if it were routine. I want to know what's happening, I said, breathless as I tried to keep up. There are at least 3 men outside, Alessandro answered without turning around. They're searching for my weak point. And that weak point is me. He stopped, abruptly. Then he turned, his eyes burning like a storm forced to stay contained. Don't say that. His tone was sharp enough to silence me instantly. A moment later, his voice softened like touching a wound that never healed. You're not my weak point, Emily. You're what I want to keep. I froze. Under the pale underground lights, he didn't look like the cold, distant boss anymore. He looked like a man trying to hold on to the one thing that made him feel human. So, I swallowed. How long do you intend to keep me like this? A faint smile appeared, but it didn't reach his eyes. Until I'm certain no one can lay a finger on you. And if I don't want to stay? Alessandro held my gaze for a long, unsettling moment. Then, he said slowly, I'll use every method necessary to make you want to. I went still. Not because of the words, but because of the way he said them, neither threatening nor pleading. Just truthful. A dangerous truth. We reached another wide, reinforced door. When Alessandro scanned his retina and pushed it open, I realized it wasn't a cell or an armory. It was the Central Security Operations Room. Dozens of screens filled the walls, displaying every corner of the Romano estate, the main gate, the lake, the forest behind the house, the rooftop, upper hallways. And I froze again. One screen showed the door to my room on the 2nd floor. Another showed the hallway beside it. And in a small corner feed, the north entrance where someone had just tried to break in. My heart pounded. You're watching me in here too. Alessandro glanced at the screen once, then turned to me, his gaze steady. I watch everything in this house, he added, deliberately, not just you. But the bedroom, a knot formed in my throat. He understood instantly before I could even finish. And for the first time, Alessandro looked uneasy, barely, but unmistakably. I don't watch. His voice was deep, sincere, stripped of all armor. I just need to know you're safe. That answer didn't erase my fear, but it changed it. It was no longer fear of a Mafia boss, but fear of what he was willing to do, because of me. Boss! A guard entered, bowing his head. We've found suspicious traces behind the greenhouse. Alessandro's expression shifted instantly like a blade unsheathed. Lock down the area. 4 men with me. No one leaves their post. The guard nodded sharply and left. I turned to Alessandro. You're going to confront them. No. Alessandro adjusted his cuffs, eyes like sharpened steel. I'm going to send them a message. What message? He stepped in front of me and lifted my chin lightly between his fingers. That anyone who touches my woman, his voice dropped to a whisper, will never see daylight again. I turned to stone. Your woman. Alessandro wasn't smiling. He wasn't teasing. He wasn't dodging. He said it like it was a fact carved in the walls. Emily, who do you think I keep in my home? Who do I bring into the deepest parts of my estate? Who do I put dozens of men in the forest to guard at midnight? I stared up at him, unable to argue. He leaned in slightly, his breath brushing my lips. You're not a prisoner. His eyes were dark, infinite. You're a choice. A choice. A beautiful, terrifying word. Before I could react, Alessandro turned to Jonas. Watch her. Alessandro Finn grabbed his hand. Where are you going? He squeezed my hand gently, holding more than words ever could. I'm taking out the trash. His voice softened as his eyes swept over my face. And Emily? I looked up. Don't step out of Jonas's sight. If you're alone for even 5 seconds, they'll find a way to reach you. A chill shot down my spine. They're coming for me, or for you. Alessandro answered without blinking. Both. He released my hand and headed for the door. But before leaving, he threw one last sentence over his shoulder, one that made my heart drop straight into a void. When I come back, we're going to talk about what I didn't get to say. I barely managed a whisper. What is that? Alessandro looked back only once for 1 second. How long I intend to keep you. Then he disappeared into the dark. Jonas led me back to the main hall. The golden light still shimmered across the crystal chandelier. But something in the air had changed, as if the house itself could feel the tension spreading over every inch of the Romano estate. The air grew heavier. Time stretched strangely. It felt like everything was waiting for an explosion. I stood by the tall glass window, looking out at the courtyard swallowed in thick darkness. The wind lashed against the trees, bending the pines, throwing jagged shadows across the ground. Jonas stayed close, posture straight, eyes sharp as a blade honed through years of use. He was like a second shadow, silent, but never more than a few meters away. Will he be okay? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though a hoarseness crept in. Since I've worked for him, Jonas replied, only 2 people have ever made boss lose his composure. 2. The first is Mr. Lorenzo. I figured, I murmured. The second? Jonas paused, studying me in a way that felt like he was solving a puzzle. Is you? I turned to him, my heartbeat missing its rhythm. Me, there's nothing special about me. No, exactly, there's nothing about you that should tie you to his world, Jonas said, and his eyes softened in a rare, contemplative way. And that's the problem. You're a piece of ordinary life he never expected and can't control. You say it like I let out a faint laugh, trying to calm myself, some kind of vulnerability. You're the part that makes him soften. His words sliced through the silence like a blade. I turned away before he could see the confusion rising in my eyes. A burst of radio static crackled through Jonas's earpiece. Fresh footprints spotted on the west side. Boss is closing in. 2 targets splitting up. Jonas immediately tensed. Carter, he said quickly, come with me. Can't I stay here? No, he shook his head. Follow me, now. He guided me into a smaller sitting room behind the grand staircase. The wooden door shut behind us, and I felt like the last thread connecting me to Alessandro had been cut away. Jonas checked the windows, tested the locks, then positioned himself directly in front of the door. Jonas, You're safest behind me. Don't leave my line of sight. The air in the room thickened like cold fog pressing against my throat. I clenched my hands. I wasn't used to being protected. I wasn't used to relying on anyone. I wasn't used to waiting for someone in the dark. I had lost someone once while waiting. I didn't think I could endure it a second time. From the hallway came muffled sounds, rushed footsteps, clipped commands over radios, the distant barking of patrol dogs. Then a loud thud echoed through the mansion. I flinched. Jonas motioned sharply for me to take cover behind the sofa. He tightened his grip on the gun at his hip, eyes locked on the door. Don't breathe too loud, he whispered. My heart hammered in my chest like a drum. I thought, If something happened to Alessandro, I couldn't even finish the thought. 5 minutes passed like an entire night. Then finally, the sound of footsteps I knew too well echoed down the hallway. Heavy, steady, carrying an unmistakable authority. Jonas immediately lowered his gun and opened the door. Alessandro walked in. His shirt was streaked with dirt, hair mussed, the top 2 buttons torn open, breathing rough but still radiating absolute dominance. He didn't speak. He didn't even look at Jonas. He only looked at me. I tried to keep my expression neutral, but the moment his eyes met mine, my knees nearly gave way. "You're not hurt?" Alessandro asked, voice low and raspy. No, I shook my head. "What about you?" He stepped closer, and when he stood right in front of me, he stopped. His presence blocked out half the room's light. "I'm fine," but it sounded more like reassurance than truth. I looked him over carefully. A long scratch marked his wrist. His shirt was ripped at the shoulder. His breathing was heavy, as if he'd been running through the forest. "You're injured." I stepped closer without thinking. The instinctive reflex of a nurse. "Let me see." Alessandro caught my hand. His hand was cold. The grip was burning. "No," he said quietly, eyes never leaving me. "It's not my blood." A shiver ran down my spine. "Jonas," Alessandro ordered, still staring at me, "out." Jonas nodded once and stepped outside, closing the door. The second the door shut, Alessandro moved half a step closer, forcing me to tilt my chin up to see him. "Emily?" His voice was low, tinged with exhaustion, relief, and something trembling beneath it. I had never heard Alessandro Romano tremble. "You?" I swallowed hard. "Did you encounter someone out there?" "It doesn't matter anymore." "It does, because you just came back and—" "What matters?" He cut me off, still holding my hand. "Is that you're here?" I went still, chest tightening. "You think I'd let them get close to you?" Alessandro's voice darkened like a storm. "Never." "But you're putting yourself in danger because of me." He took both my hands and pressed them against his chest. "Because you're worth it." The warmth beneath my palms sent my heartbeat into chaos. I wanted to tell him he was wrong. I wanted to tell him I was just an ordinary nurse. I wanted to tell him he was placing me somewhere I couldn't handle. But when I looked into Alessandro's eyes, every denial turned to ash. "Emily," he said slowly, "do you know what drives me insane?" I shook my head. The moment I thought I might never see you again. My breath snagged painfully. And do you know what I thought right after that? I exhaled shakily, feeling like I was standing at the edge of something I couldn't undo. I thought, Alessandro pulled me closer, until only a thread of air separated us. "I need to tell you this before it's too late." I stared up at him, my heart almost breaking. "You make me want to leave this world behind." He leaned closer, his lips nearly brushing mine. "You make me want something normal in a life that's never been normal." My breath caught entirely. "Emily." His voice was no longer the voice of a mafia boss, not sharp, not cold, but the voice of a man confessing. I tried to avoid it, tried to ignore it, tried to bury it. His forehead pressed gently against mine, our breaths mingling. But tonight, when I ran into the dark to find you, his fingers slid to my waist, holding me carefully, tightly. I knew I can't lose you. A tremor went through me, but I didn't pull away. The darkness around us seemed to recede, leaving just the two of us breathing the same air. Alessandro. His name left my lips like the most dangerous word I'd ever spoken. "You'll hate me for this," he whispered, "but I can't stop myself." His hand tightened on my waist. His gaze fell to my lips, slow, deliberate, warm enough to burn. And just when the final inch between us was about to disappear, a loud explosion shook the ground outside. The glass windows rattled violently. Jonas shouted from the hallway, "Boss, East Side is under attack." Alessandro pulled me into his chest instantly. "Emily," he said urgently, voice snapping back into lethal focus. "Don't leave this room, no matter what happens." Alessandro. He cupped my face, eyes blazing with something equal parts ruthless and gentle. "When I come back," he whispered. I'll finish the sentence I didn't get to say. Then he let me go and stormed out of the room like a hurricane wrapped in black. The door slammed shut, leaving me standing there, chest still warm where he'd held me, and the unfinished sentence a blade lodged in my heart. The chaos from the east yard slammed against the walls of the room like a hammer pounding directly into my chest. Shouts, clipped orders crackling over the guards' radios, the sound of K9 units racing down the hallway, everything blended into a storm rumbling just beyond these walls. I stood still where Alessandro had just been, my hand unconsciously resting where he'd touched me. My heart was still beating in the same rushed rhythm as his. When I come back, I'll finish the sentence I left unfinished. God! I had never feared a sentence the way I feared that one. And yet I had never wanted to hear a sentence as badly as I wanted to hear that one. I took a deep breath. It caught in my throat. Jonas didn't come back. No one did. The silence inside the room grew too large, too heavy. It felt like I was locked inside a space filled only with the noise in my own head. What if something happens to Alessandro? What if he doesn't come back this time, and that unfinished sentence hangs there forever? What if I never get to say anything back? I twisted my hands together, trying to force my breathing to steady. It didn't. It couldn't. 10 minutes passed. 20. 30. Distant gunshots echoed faintly, and I held my breath with each one. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I walked to the door and saw something that made my heart tighten. The door was not locked. No latch, no deadbolt. Alessandro had left it open. An unlocked door, but a sentence locking my heart in place. He trusted me to listen. He trusted me to stay. And somehow, that made me want to run out and find him even more. But I didn't. Not because I was afraid. Not because I thought I'd get in his way. But because I understood if I went out there and Alessandro knew I was in danger, he would lose control. And his world did not allow that. I turned away from the door. And that's when I saw something that made my stomach drop. A shadow moved behind the curtain by the glass doors. I didn't even have time to scream. A hand clamped over my mouth from behind strong, but not suffocating. An arm wrapped around my waist, dragging me backward. Shh, don't be scared. A man's voice whispered right against my ear, cold and thin like a blade sliding through the wind. I tried to wrench free. He tightened his grip. You're Emily Carter, right? My mind went blank for a second. My tongue felt numb. He knew my name. He knew me. You stay calm, and I'll stay calm. His breath brushed the side of my neck, raising goosebumps along my skin. I don't want to kill you. But he still pressed a knife into my side. Let's see, he went on, voice drifting like he was enjoying a new toy. You're the one Alessandro's been hiding, aren't you? The one who makes him lose his mind and open his entire security grid just to find... My breath stuttered. You make him weak. He chuckled softly. And that makes you interesting. I squeezed my fists, searching for any angle to escape. Nothing. He was in complete control. Now, Emily, you're going to come with... He didn't finish the sentence. Click. The door swung open, and Alessandro stood there. His shirt was torn further at the shoulder. A dried streak of blood ran along his temple. His breathing was heavy. His eyes were so dark I couldn't even tell what color they were anymore. But the moment his gaze landed on me, they lit up, like a storm that had just found its center. Let her go. His voice wasn't loud, but each word hit the air like a strike, enough to make the entire room constrict. The man's grip on me tightened. The knife dug deeper into my side, and I hissed under my breath. Oh, he laughed. The king himself arrived so fast. I was expecting you to take a little longer. Alessandro stared at him without blinking. Last time, let her go. Or what his tone was lazy, almost amused. You'll kill me, that's fine. But my knife will still have time to reach her ribs before you pull the trigger. I could feel the blade trembling with his breath. And I could feel the change in Alessandro, a dangerous shift. Like a volcano beginning to crack. Valenti doesn't need her dead, the man continued. He needs her alive, so he can watch you explode from the inside out. Alessandro took a step forward. The man yanked me half a step back. One more step. He pressed the knife harder, and her blood spills first. I don't know what passed through Alessandro's eyes in that split second. All I know is that the man holding me shivered and retreated another fraction of a step, as if he'd seen something in Alessandro he couldn't quite understand. The silence stretched, until Alessandro spoke, in a tone that made my heart clamp tight. "Emily." I responded almost instantly, even though my lips were shaking. I'm here." For a heartbeat. His eyes softened a fleeting second, but enough to make my chest ache. He dipped his head slightly, like he was drawing strength from somewhere deep inside. "Don't be afraid." My throat burned. I didn't understand why he was saying that, when he was the one facing knives, guns, and both our lives on the line. "I'm here," Alessandro said, just loud enough for me to hear. "I'm here, and I'm not going to let that happen." I bit my lip, I know. The man laughed. Touching? Excessively so. But unfortunately, crash. The back door slammed open. Hannah stepped in not with a tray of tea like I'd seen before, but with a charged stun baton crackling with electricity. In that flash of crackling light, he flinched and turned. And Alessandro lunged. Two men collided like cornered animals. I was shoved hard into the couch. The knife flew from his hand. And Jonas burst in from the hallway, tackling him and locking him down in a blur of motion my eyes could barely follow. Metal clattered against the floor. He groaned. Alessandro's breath tore out of him, rough and uneven. Alessandro Punj scrambled toward him. He stayed on his feet, but his breathing was ragged, a fresh tear in his shoulder still seeping blood. Jonas dragged the man out, while Hannah shut the door and checked the locks. But I saw none of that. I only saw Alessandro. He looked at me, breath harsh, eyes deep. "Are you hurt?" His voice was low. I shook my head quickly. "No. What about you?" Alessandro lifted a hand to my cheek, as if making sure I was really there. "I'm fine." It was a terrible lie, but I let him say it. My fingers curled into his torn sleeve, the reality of how close I'd come to losing him hitting me all at once. "Alessandro?" My voice quivered. "You said you had a sentence you hadn't finished." He looked at me. No more control, no more steel walls, no more distance fit for a boss. Just Alessandro, the man who was looking at me as if I were the only heir he had left. He pulled me closer with a tenderness that made the whole room go quiet. "Emily," he said, each word carving itself into me, the unfinished sentences. He rested his forehead against mine, our breaths merging. "I chose you, long before you ever realized it." My heart skipped a beat. 1, 2, and just as his lips were about to touch mine, the radio crackled. "Boss, Valenti just sent a message." Alessandro closed his eyes, swallowed a long breath, then opened them again, his gaze darker than the night outside. "Emily," he murmured, "this is only the beginning." That night, the entire estate felt like a massive body trying to stay steady under a fever. Outside, security moved across the grounds like a flowing current, ordered, efficient, but tense. Inside, the long hallway leading to Alessandro's room glowed softly with amber sconces, the only warm light in a night cold enough to steal breath. "You're not going back to your room tonight." His voice came right after his radio cut off. Low, rough. The depth of exhaustion lived beneath each word, even though he still stood tall, unyielding. I nodded, I know. "It's not because they went after you," he continued, eyes dropping to meet mine. "It's because if Valenti sent a message, he's not planning to stop at a warning." "A message," I whispered. "What kind?" Alessandro stayed silent for a few heavy seconds, a small pause, but so weighted it made my shoulders sink. "It's part of the game." His voice was even, as if he were trying to keep me from panicking. But I understood. Messages from enemies were never simple. Hannah and Jonas waited outside the door, forming a wall of flesh and discipline. Jonas glanced at me a look that said, "Don't leave him." Hannah gave a subtle nod, her eyes not those of a housekeeper, but a seasoned fighter. When the door closed behind them, it left only the two of us, and the silence between our breaths. "Sit here." Alessandro guided me toward the long couch near the window. Outside, The forest was swallowed by darkness. Security lights swept in slow arcs like cold lightning across the grounds. I turned to him. He looked directly at me for the first time that night, and in that look, I saw so many things layered together: pain, exhaustion, pride, and something softer. "Are you scared?" he asked. I was honest. Yes, but not because of Valenti. The lamp on the table flickered, throwing light across a tear in his shoulder, a wound he still hadn't let me treat. "Then who?" he asked. I took a deep breath, my heart speaking faster than my mind could interfere. "You?" Alessandro stilled, not because he was surprised, but because he understood what I meant. "I'm scared you'll get hurt," I whispered. "I'm scared I'll have to watch you walk into battles I can't step into. I'm scared that one day you'll go and not come back." His expression changed, like my words slipped past all his armor and struck something buried deep inside. He lowered his head slightly, his warm hand lifting my chin so I had to meet his eyes. "Emily, the one who should be afraid of getting hurt because of me is you, not the other way around." "I don't want to be a burden." I shook my head. "You're not a burden." His voice was steady, so steady it made my chest tighten. "You're the one weakness I refuse to hide." Silence swallowed the room for a few long seconds. I felt breathless, not from fear, but from the weight of what he'd just said. Alessandro let go of my chin, stood, walked to a drawer, and pulled out a black wooden box. He placed it on the table and opened it. Inside was a small, sleek gun. I jerked back. "Why are you giving me that?" He didn't answer right away. He picked up the gun and set it in my hands, each movement deliberate, as if placing something precious into my palms. "You don't have to use it," he said slowly, "but you need to know you're never helpless." My hands trembled. "I can't shoot someone," I whispered. "I know." He covered my hands with his, enveloping the gun between our palms. "But if Valenti or anyone else touches you, I want you to have a chance." A breath escaped me, shaky, hollow. I didn't want to imagine that scenario, but the look in Alessandro's eyes told me that in his world, every possibility had to be prepared for. And he trusted no one but me. "You're preparing me to step into your world," I said quietly. He nodded once. "Not because I want to," he replied, "but because I don't have any other choice. I have to pull you in to protect you, instead of leaving you outside to be hunted." A cold shiver ran down my spine. He had never spoken this plainly before. He had never let me see the side of him, the part that admitted helplessness. I set the gun down. "I don't want weapons," I said. "I want the truth." Alessandro's gaze deepened so intensely it made my heart sway. "Tonight," he said, "Valenti wasn't attacking me." I froze, "Not you." He shook his head. "He was coming for you." My blood felt like it stopped moving. "He doesn't need to bring me down," Alessandro went on. "He just needs to hit what matters most to me." I couldn't breathe. "And what matters most," he said as he stepped closer, "is you." Both his hands framed my face, his thumbs brushing my cheeks as if he could wipe away the panic forming there. Tonight was a test. Next time, he won't be testing. His voice dropped lower. I'd trade my entire life before I let that happen. Tears blurred my vision before I could stop them. Alessandro leaned down and kissed my eyelid, a kiss without desire, only protection so fierce it hurt. "Emily," he murmured, "this isn't just my fight anymore. It's our fight." "Our?" The word fell quietly yet heavy like a stone sinking into deep water. I didn't know when things had shifted from you to us, but in that moment, something shifted inside me too. No longer was I just a girl who stumbled into his world. No longer was I terrified I didn't belong. For the first time, I felt like someone he chose to stand beside him. In the long silence that followed, he pulled me into his arms. Not urgent, not possessive, just tight, like he was making sure I was really still there. His breath warmed the top of my head, rising and falling with the stress slowly draining from him. "Emily," his voice was so soft it hurt. Yes, I looked up at him. His eyes were the sky after a storm, still troubled, but clearer. "When all this is over," he said, "I need you to answer one question." I swallowed. "What question?" He answered with a voice low and deep enough to settle into every cell in my body. Are you willing to enter my world? Not as someone I protect, but as someone I love. My heart stopped. My hands curled against my chest. You love. My voice trembled. Alessandro placed a finger gently on my lips, silencing the unfinished question. Not now. His words were a whisper. When it's safe, when Valenti is gone, when I can say that word without you having to pay the price. I stared at him. And in that moment, even though he didn't finish the sentence, I knew the truth. Alessandro wasn't fighting just to protect me. He was fighting because he had fallen in love with me, at the moment he least should have. Dawn came far too early. The morning light mixed with the lingering smell of burnt wood, drifting in from somewhere beyond the estate, the aftertaste of the attack the night before. The east grounds still showed tire marks etched into the damp earth, like scars tracing every chaotic heartbeat I hadn't seen, only heard. Inside the room, Alessandro stood by the window, his shadow stretching long across the wooden floor. The dim light traced the lines of his body, solid but tired, powerful yet carrying some invisible cut I couldn't see. I stood there quietly, watching him from behind. Somewhere along the way, I'd learned to read his mood just by looking at his back. And this morning, that mood was heavy, too heavy. You didn't sleep? I said softly. Alessandro didn't turn around, but his voice dipped lower. I couldn't. Things aren't finished. Last night you almost died. He let out a faint laugh. It wasn't even close to joy. I've come close more times than that. I stepped closer, but last night you almost lost me. That stopped him, like I'd just pressed my hand over an unhealed wound. Slowly, Alessandro turned to face me. For the first time, in those cold gray eyes, I saw a kind of fear that didn't belong to the Mafia world. Not fear of death, not fear of losing power. Fear of losing a person. Emily, he said, his voice almost turning to smoke. If something had happened to you yesterday, I don't know what I would have done. I reached for his hand, needing to feel he was still here, still breathing. I'm okay. I'm still here. But he touched you. It wasn't jealousy in his voice. It was a storm that had almost broken loose. I squeezed his hand tighter. And you saved me. I should have done more. He let go of my hand, walked over to a large wooden cabinet, and pulled out a thick file tied together with a simple cord. No logo, no label, no title. But the second I saw it, I knew it wasn't just any file. He set it down on the table and pushed it toward me. This is the truth you asked for. A tremor passed through me. The truth about you. Not just about me, Alessandro replied. About Valenti. About why he will never let you live in peace. My heart thudded hard against my ribs. I opened the file. The first line knocked the air out of my lungs. Emily Carter, tracking file. Breath left my body like I'd taken a punch. Why is he investigating me, I asked, my voice rough. He's not investigating, Alessandro said. He's looking for a crack, a weak spot he can use to pull me down. I flipped to the next page. Photos of the hospital, photos of me leaving my building, photos of me at work. Even traffic cam stills places I didn't even know I'd been watched. Oh my God, I whispered. How long has he been following me? More than 3 months. I shot to my feet. 3 months, but I only met you a little over a week ago. Alessandro stepped closer, his hand settling on my shoulder. Valenti has been watching everyone who's ever treated my men. A chill slid down my spine. Why? Because he knew, Alessandro said, eyes dark and fathomless, that if I got hurt, you're the one I would choose. I shook my head, stumbling back, trying to organize my thoughts. No, that doesn't make sense. I'm just a regular nurse. No, Alessandro cut in. You're not regular. His eyes locked onto mine like chains not to trap me, but to stop me from collapsing. When you walked into that ER room that night, I knew. Knew what I whispered. He was silent for a moment, as if searching for the right words. That there was something about you, so calm it made me want to stop. Just for a moment. Just stop. My heart skipped a beat. You're not my weakness, he went on. You're the reason I have to stay alive. I blinked fast, swallowing back the wave rising in my chest. And Valenti knew that before I ever admitted it to myself. The air thickened around us. I could feel the weight of every word he said, like they'd been dragged up from the deepest part of him. But he still wasn't finished. Alessandro reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. It was so small I almost thought it was a letter. It wasn't. He placed it in my hand. This was found intact on the body of the man Valenti sent last night. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. On it was written, "If you won't destroy yourself, I'll destroy what you love, V." The note slipped from my fingers. I sucked in a breath like someone about to go under. "He's obsessed with you to this extent," I whispered. "No." Alessandro's gaze hardened. "He's consumed by his own hatred." "Why?" Alessandro watched me for a moment. Then he said something I never expected. "Because once I spared his life." I almost didn't believe it. "Why?" I whispered again. He turned his face back toward the window, golden morning light blurring along his profile, making his loneliness clearer than ever. "Because his father saved my life when I was 10, Alessandro said, voice light but sharp as a snapped thread. "His father died protecting me. I owed him a life. I paid that debt by letting Valenti live. And he came back to kill you." Alessandro gave a small, broken smile. "His father died to protect me. Valenti thinks that should have been him." I understood. He hated Alessandro because Alessandro was the one who'd been protected instead of him. A wound that never healed. The room seemed to tilt. "Now I get it," I murmured. "Get what Alessandro asked? That I'm not just some random target, I'm the place he wants to strike, to hurt you the most." Alessandro took my hand and pulled me closer, as if he were afraid I'd disappear if he didn't touch me. "I won't let him lay a finger on you again," he said, eyes flashing steel. "Not as long as I'm breathing." I laid my hand flat over his chest, right where his heart was pounding hard beneath his shirt. "But if you keep throwing yourself into danger because of me, then Valenti wins," I whispered. He froze. I lifted my gaze to his, steady and clear. "You think fighting him is how you protect me? It's not." "Why not?" he asked, voice low. "Because he doesn't want you dead," I said, enunciating every word. "He wants you alive, to watch me suffer." A vein pulsed at Alessandro's temple. He understood. I knew he did. "Then what do you think I should do?" he asked slowly. I tightened my grip on his hand. "You have to live," I said, my voice catching. "Not just to fight, not just to get revenge, but to choose a future you actually want." Alessandro stared at me, long, very long, as if no one had ever said that to him before. Then his hand came up, fingers brushing my cheek, his thumb tracing gently under my eye. "Emily," he murmured, his voice trembling just enough for me to feel it. "You make me weaker." I held my breath. "But you're also the only one who makes me want to be better." My chest ached painful and warm at the same time. "And that," I said softly, "is exactly why Valenti will never truly beat you." Alessandro leaned down, close enough for our breaths to mix. "Thank you," he whispered, "for seeing the part of me I've spent my whole life trying to hide." I opened my mouth to answer, but he was already pressing his lips gently to my forehead, a kiss without demand, without haste, without possession. A kiss of gratitude. A kiss of acknowledgement. When he pulled back, there was a new light in his eyes that made my heartbeat skip. "Emily," he breathed, "I chose you, but from this moment on, I'm also choosing the way of living that you want me to live." A single tear slid down my cheek, and this time, it wasn't from fear. It was because, for the first time, Alessandro wasn't just the man standing in the dark. He was a man who wanted to step into the light. For me,